Broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California. Your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, it is another day that ends in Y, and so what does that mean? It means the left has lost their minds, if they ever had their minds. Spike Lee compared Donald Trump to Hitler. I wondered how long that would take before they actually went all the way and called Donald Trump not just a racist, a nativist, but Hitler. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is speaking out against Barack Obama's ridiculously expensive trip to Paris, the Obama motorcade for climate change. I call it climate control because they ain't going to be able to change anything, but the talks, the cost, the taxpayer bill that we're going to get is no less than $784,825. And by the way, there's an article out by Elizabeth Harrington at the freebeacon.com, and she goes through, we're going to go through a lot of the details of it just so that you at least understand what you're paying for. But she drives home the point that the hypocrisy goes so far. There is no limit to Obama's hypocrisy. In his contract for vehicles for the motorcade, limousine, 700, that alone, just the motorcade was $784,825. Just the motorcade, just the limousine and all the cars. By the way, no sustainability clause in that contract. Nothing about buying credits so that you can offset your carbon usage, of which the entire event, the UN Climate Control Summit, is reputed to have burned over 300, or will by the end, over 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. That doesn't bother me. I'm not freaked out over carbon dioxide. I know that the climate will eventually adjust itself, and I don't think we should destroy our economy or take away basic freedoms from Americans or anyone, anywhere in the world for that matter, simply to appease the hysterical left. Hillary Clinton is getting crushed on social media, and you wouldn't believe who's talking about it. And it's not Fox News. It's not the right-wing bloggers. It is left-wing bloggers who are pointing out they did something called a word cloud, and they had this company called Signal Labs actually track all of the words that are most readily associated with an individual on social media. And you've got to see Hillary Clinton's word cloud. I'll have it up a little bit later on the Facebook. It's unbelievable. And coming up later on in the show, we're going to have my good friend, Politichicks.com founder, Anne-Marie Morell, former Democrat, by the way, who has a big announcement. So you want to stay tuned in the 4 o'clock hour because you don't want to miss her. She's always entertaining and always interesting, and today's the day for her big announcement, and she wanted to make it here on the Tim Donnelly Show. We are honored to have her. By the way, today is the 60-year anniversary of Rosa Parks, First Lady of Civil Rights, refusing to sit in the back of the bus, refusing essentially to be treated any differently than any other American, any other human being, stood up for civil rights, stood up for human rights. I wish somebody would interview her and ask her what she thinks about this Black Lives Matter movement, because you have Rosa Parks, who stood up for basic human dignity, and the Black Lives Matter movement, I believe, largely stands up for thugs against the cops, even though there are a couple of cases where the cops have clearly done something wrong, but they're being held accountable. I mean, we have a system, we have videotape now, and we also have trials, and you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But the very people who don't want to be on the wrong end of the innocent until proven guilty, who don't want to be assumed guilt by association or guilt by skin color, all of a sudden want to declare guilty anyone wearing blue. And with Obama getting in on that, I think it's a big mistake. I think it is turning off a lot more Americans than making them sympathetic to the plight of Black Americans. I just think it's Rosa Parks was standing up for civil rights and for equality, for equal treatment. And the Black Lives Matter movement is standing up so that blacks can get away with whatever they want, as long as you're black. Let me rephrase it. If you're a black conservative, you're held to the exact same standard as every white conservative, which is you're assumed guilty of everything. You will be tarred and feathered, blank. You will absolutely be demonized out of the gate without any restraint on behalf of the left stream media. Mark my words. Well, just look at the treatment of Dr. Ben Carson. Here's a decent man who's put himself in harm's way, literally, with the way the media treats black conservatives. And you know what? He's one of the best examples I can think of. If you were looking for a leader for your community, and I think obviously the polls show a good portion of the country would follow him. I'd be happy to have him as president. I have some concerns about some of his positions, but I think he's a decent, honorable man. And, well, you compare him to Spike Lee, who is out there calling Donald Trump Hitler. I mean, come on. And Spike Lee's got a disgusting movie coming out, all fixated on gun control, called Chirac instead of Iraq. It filmed in the south side of Chicago, but it wants to put the crosshairs, as it were, on the NRA and law-abiding gun owners to blame them for the epidemic of deaths and murders and mayhem within Obama's former stomping grounds. Anyway, 323, we got a lot of show to get to. 323-746-TALK is our number. 323-746-8255. We'll be right back after this break. Hey, welcome back to the show. We've got a war on white people in this country. Yes, I just said that. Yes, I said that on Rosa Parks Day. And you know what? It's just undeniable. There's nothing you can do or say that's going to make it untrue. There was a story out earlier this week. The University of Illinois at Chicago, a student has been arrested and will face charges for an online threat to kill at least 16 white devils in revenge for the death of Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by police. These are his words. "This is my only warning. At 10 a.m. Monday morning, I'm going to the campus quad of the University of Chicago. I will be armed with an M4 carbine and 2 Desert Eagles." I don't know how you're going to carry an M4 carbine or shoot an M4 carbine and 2 Desert Eagles. It'd be hard enough to shoot one Desert Eagle if you don't know what that is. That's a 50 caliber revolver that takes 2 hands and 2 arms to hold it, all fully loaded. I will execute approximately 16 white male students and or staff, which is the same number of times McDonald was killed. That's what the Chicago Tribune reported. The message continued, I will then die killing any number of white policemen in the process. This is not a joke. I am to do my part to rid the world of white devils. I expect you to do the same. The threat was left on a website called warstarhiphop.com over the weekend. And surprise, surprise, a reader alerted the FBI to the threat on Sunday morning. After day-long discussions between the FBI and local authorities, University President Robert Zimmer decided to cancel all classes Monday. Based on the FBI's assessment of this threat and recent tragic events at other campuses across the country, we have decided in consultation with federal and local law enforcement officials to exercise caution by canceling all classes and activities on the Hyde Park campus through midnight on Monday. If you remember, 17-year-old Laquan McDonald was shot and killed by police in October of 2014, and a video of the shooting was released last week. The police officer who shot, here's the key statement, here's the key sentence. The police officer who shot McDonald has been charged with first-degree murder. The police officer who shot Laquan McDonald has been charged with first-degree murder, as he should. So, does it honor Rosa Parks? Does it honor Martin Luther King Jr.? Does it honor any of those who suffered, who died to bring about civil rights for Black Americans, to go out and threaten to kill 16 strangers in retribution when justice is being served? See, the question is, are we going to live in the same country? Are we going to live under the rule of law, all of us? And the rule of law sometimes sucks. Sometimes it protects the bad guys. Sometimes it takes too long and we get frustrated. But it doesn't give you the right to go murder people. Doesn't give you the right to go take God's greatest gift from random strangers. I'm sorry. This is where, when I read stuff like this, it makes me, if it's at all humanly possible, it makes me an even more ardent supporter of the Second Amendment. And it makes me a more ardent supporter of your right to carry, regardless of whether the government says you can or not. That's where I stand. I believe the Second Amendment, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights grants you that right. And unless you lose that right, it is implicit and you have it. There, I said it. Okay, cart me off to jail. What do I care? What are they going to do? Arrest me for my thoughts? Are we going to have the thought police out here? There is an update on this story. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois has released the name of the suspect, Jabari R. Dean. He's 21 years old. He was arrested Monday morning without incident. He has been charged with transmitting a threat in interstate commerce, which carries a maximum 5-year sentence if he's convicted. Here's the thing. We see this everywhere. When we have Spike Lee out there calling Donald Trump a Hitler, as soon as you call somebody or compare somebody to Hitler, you have dehumanized them. So in this current environment where it's okay to kill cops, according to the Black Lives Matter movement, it's actually encouraged, where it is considered appropriate to violate the rights of everyone else, especially white people. See, white people are the enemy, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody in the media is just fine with that. And the minute that anybody says anything about white, people get scared. They start getting nervous. Oh my God, I might be accused of something if I actually stand up and say there's a war on white people. Look, there was an article today out of Australia where there's a huge rise on the university campuses there of white student unions. And I have never seen so many politicians so freaked out over such a simple thing. And they interviewed some students who said, no, this is, everyone's saying, oh, it must be a hoax, it must be a satire. They said, no, we just want equality. And the very people who are trying to deny us equality are the politically correct, middle-aged, liberal white professors who say it's not okay for you to have equal rights and it's not okay for you to be treated the same as everybody else. Look, if you can have a black student union, why can't you have a white one? If you can have an Asian student union or a Latino student union. Hell, on our campuses here in California, we have illegal alien-only student unions. We have buildings that are absolutely dedicated to what they call the undocumented, but obviously they have documents. They just they don't have legal status to be in the United States. But we're going to give them a free college education. We're going to give them their own building so that they don't feel uncomfortable. And so are you surprised that Caucasian Americans might say, hey, what about us? What about our kids? What about our rights? Somebody's got to stand up for them because, once again, in California, Caucasians have become a minority. And I want to be clear. I don't think there should be any delineation by race whatsoever. I believe that race has been used to divide a great people in this country, a people that had begun to come together, that had begun to work through their problems and their issues. Now you have the universities in particular have become these hotbeds of radicalism where they are radical, they are, what's the right word? They're racializing. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what they're doing. They're racializing everything. And so they are radical racialists. Instead of racists, they're racialists because they want to make everything about race. They want to make everything about class. They want to make everything about the fact that they might be offended by someone's presence or someone's flag or someone's words or someone's very existence. And there is no right in this country to not be offended. That doesn't exist. That's not in the Bill of Rights anywhere. There is a right to free speech. And guess what? If you don't like what somebody's saying, you don't have the right to shut them up, but you do have the right to shut them out. It's called changing the channel. It's called putting your fingers in your ears. It's called walking away. You do have that right. Every American has that right. Every human being has that right if they choose to exercise it. But that requires them to control themselves and to take responsibility for their own actions rather than blame someone else and say it's all in the name of race. You know, I think cries of racism are going to become the crying wolf of our time because racism, which once meant people who viewed you as not human and denied you the rights of every other human being, it's now become the excuse du jour for everything. Oh, he cut me off. He must be a racist. Well, I think Martin Luther King is turning over in his grave, and Rosa Parks is probably not very happy about it either. We will be right back. Stay tuned for more of the Tim Donnelly Show. Hey, welcome back. You have found your way to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. By the way, we've got a clip of a little video that Donald Trump posted on his Instagram, which the guy knows how to do social media. You got to give it to the Donald. I don't know if we got that ready to go, but if we could roll that, it's actually a great segue for what I want to talk about.
In turmoil and falling apart in so many different ways, especially with ISIS. Our president is worried about global warming. What a ridiculous situation.
There it is. I mean, Donald, what I like about him is he doesn't blather on and on and on like Obama. Yesterday with his 14-minute speech, he had to be beeped over and over and over every 30 seconds repeatedly for over 3 minutes, and it still didn't shut him up. It was funny. I was reading this article, and if every one of the 147 speakers took as much time as Obama, hogged as much of the hot air as Obama did. See, he's taking more than his fair share, which is what he's always accusing everyone else of doing in this global warming, global cooling, which is really global climate change. It's global climate control argument. But it's all about don't do as I do as I say. There's one set of rules for me and another one for you. Well, it always comes down to the money. And I mentioned this article at freebeacon.com by Elizabeth Harrington. It is chock full of some amazing statistics. So the car service, hotels, and accommodations for the president and other administration officials to attend climate change talks in Paris are costing the taxpayers nearly $2 million, according to government contracts. Here's Obama, who gives this speech, holds this press conference, and says, this is a powerful rebuke to the terrorists. I don't know how it was a powerful anything. It's a joke that you're going to focus on an issue that has nothing to do with anything. It is a made-up problem. It's made up by people who don't have any real problems. Life is so good that we have to invent an evil force. I mean, our grandparents fought against the Nazis. Our parents fought in other wars. There's always been some sort of a major threat. Today, we are fighting an enemy that doesn't really have a country, and it's more of an ideology than it is anything else. It is a particular form of insanity. But you've got 200 world leaders who are going to spend 12 days on a made-up problem and bloviate and blow a lot of hot air over nothing. And let me just take you through the numbers, because by the way, you're paying for it. So I already told you they're going to burn 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide just to get there. The tab for Obama's motorcade alone, $784,825. The State Department issued a $407,688 contract to Bourbon Limousines, an international chauffeur service, just for the vehicles for the president's security detail. No sustainability included, the contract states under a section for contract clauses. That means they're not going to buy into this phony baloney. You can pay. If you feel like you're hurting the environment, you can pay and make yourself feel better. What a bunch of crap. Numerous other contracts for passenger vehicle rentals include $90,000 for accompanying press, totaled $377,000. Taxpayers were billed $100,216 to book hotel accommodations for the president's stay, hotel rooms, cell phones for U.S. Secret Service traveling with the president, $16,642 and $4,000 respectively. I guess the hookers are additional. A number of cabinet secretaries are also in Paris for the UN conference, including IRS. Why is the IRS commissioner, John Costikian, there? We're paying $5,400. Why don't we just fire his ass and get rid of the IRS? Why do they need to be there at some climate change nonsense? You got to be kidding me. Well, I guess maybe since it is about climate control and controlling people, Secretary of State John Kerry's car service totaled $76,000 with 3 separate contracts. I guess one wasn't good enough for him. Car service for Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz cost $20,000, and 2 contracts were issued for $10,000 each for Ag Secretary Tom Visak. Why is the Agriculture Secretary? I don't get all this. You've got Interior Secretary Sally Jewell also attending the conference, with hotel accommodations at the Tuileries Finances in Paris costing $36,000. So she has to stay in a special hotel because she's special. In all, costs associated with the climate control summit totaled $1.8 million. And that included $51,000 just to rent a hangar for Marine One during the duration of the trip, $4,700 to rent office equipment, $12,500 for a hotel suite to be used as a control room, $7,239 for the hotels for the United States Agency for International Development. I thought they didn't want development. I thought that they wanted to shrink your global footprint. Oh, well. And the government also paid, this is strange, this is a strange expense, an interior design agency named Decorall paid them $500,000, over $500,000 for accommodations. I don't get it. I don't know what those accommodations are. It doesn't, nowhere are they made clear in the least. And then, of course, Obama is going to come home with proposals. He's already stated them, costing up to $45 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B, dollars a year. And what do we get in return as taxpayers for all of this money spent? $2 million plus $45 billion a year. What are you going to get? Are you going to get cleaner air? Nope. Are you going to get a better environment? Nope. You might reduce global temperatures by less than 0.2 degree. Maybe. There's no guarantee. And as a matter of fact, if you wait 15 years, the same global warming hysterics are predicting a global freeze, a cooling, brutal, severe winters. So you could actually spend no money whatsoever and get the same result and not have the government take away your freedom and your cash. I wonder which one makes the most sense. Well, we're going to have a clip by Carly Fiorina when we come back that she really zeroes in and nails it on this whole issue. 323-746-TALK if you want to get on the conversation. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We got Anne Marie Morell coming up with a big announcement. So Carly Fiorina weighed in on the... She was having an interesting discussion about Obama and his nonsense with the global warming, but also the fact that he goes abroad and he's continually criticizing the United States. But she brings up a very interesting point at the end of this interview about how the TPP, that Trans-Pacific Trade Package, could actually include retroactively whatever agreements have been made between all these multi-parties, more than one party, more than one country at once, and that we would be bound by them. And she's very eloquent on what a dangerous concept that is, because it basically violates the Constitution. It violates our own freedom. And the way that it's negotiated it is not negotiated. It is sort of folded in. Anyway, here she is on the Laura Ingraham program.
Joining us now, Carly Fiorina, who's been terrific not only on the issue of life, but on terrorism and this climate change farce over there in Paris. She joins us now. Carly, great to talk to you. How are you? Where are you today, by the way?
I am Great. Thank you for having me, Laura. I'm in South Carolina today, Columbia and Charleston.
Awesome. Great places both. What's your reaction to the president's line over there? He's overseas and he's talking about this doesn't happen in other countries. I think looking down his nose at the American gun culture, once again implicit in those remarks. What say you?
Yes, exactly. Well, it's our guns and our religion. Remember that. He's never really changed. And he continues to blame us for all kinds of things. He opened that press conference today by saying it's a powerful rebuke to the terrorists. He somehow seems to believe that our behavior causes terrorism. No, it's not a rebuke to the terrorists. It's delusional. The terrorists are absolutely delighted that our president is so delusional that instead of fighting ISIS, he's talking about climate change. I watched much of his press conference, and his passion comes when he's talking about climate change. He has no passion when he's talking about defeating our real enemy, which is ISIS. And while he talks about let's be accurate and factual about Planned Parenthood, okay, here's some facts. Planned Parenthood acknowledged just a couple weeks ago that they will no longer take compensation for the sale of body parts, or as they call it, fetal tissue. Mm-hmm. I would call that an admission. Factually speaking, Planned Parenthood funnels millions of dollars in political contributions as a taxpayer-funded organization to pro-abortion candidates. Mr. President, by all means, let us be factual.
The other issue that, of course, they don't really want to discuss, so they talk about the shiny, cool thing that the elites like, which is we're all going to bow down at the altar of the global warming debate. They don't want to really have the people understand what's in this Trans-Pacific Partnership. Carly, you and I have talked about this before. Now, trade experts who've actually read all 5,544 pages of the TPP, Jesse Richmond, Raymond Richmond, authors of the book Balanced Trade, we're going to have them on the show later this week. They've actually read Chapter 20 in the TPP that, quote, listen to this, Carly, requires compliance with previous multilateral environmental agreements that have been negotiated. So they believe that this Trans-Pacific Partnership will likely incorporate the TPP into it once the commission first meets after the Trans-Pacific Partnership is passed. If Congress moves forward to pass this quickly will be part of the overall agreement, even if Congress doesn't vote on it as a treaty. Do you follow? And what is your take on this?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's an example of why these extremely complicated multi-party agreements are not in our interest. Because buried in the 5,000 pages negotiated with 12 other countries are trapdoors. That's a trapdoor if ever there was one. And it does not serve our interest.
And in the end, both trade deals and any type of treaties negotiated should be based in how they affect the average American, comply with our Constitution. And what would you say to Congress as they're considering this and perhaps trying to push it off to a lame duck vote, Carly, after the presidential election? What do you say to the Republican and Democrat members of Congress?
First, trade agreements are far better when negotiated bilaterally as opposed to multilaterally. Secondly, it makes no sense to lock this country in to a multilateral agreement negotiated over years in secret that has trapdoors such as you just described. So man up, stand up, and either vote and be prepared to be held accountable or vote this thing down. It's a little bit like the continuing resolution. Let's push all this off to the next president.
Jeb Bush yesterday.
It's why people have lost faith in their leaders.
Well, I completely agree.
Well, you have it right there, and you know what really strikes me about Carly's clarity is she didn't have to go look this up in a book. She didn't have to spend time talking to policy advisors. She knows what she thinks. She was very clear. She sees the clear-cut issue, especially in this day of everyone having their own grudge against the United States or against the establishment or against white culture, as it were, it will always be used as a way to get back at us because we've been successful, because we have industrialized, because we have created a society in which you basically can live peaceably among your neighbors, among people of many different cultures. You can be secure in your person and in your property to a certain extent that is diminishing because of the government. But of course, there's crime, there's people who have evil intent. But bottom line is right now, you have the right to keep and bear arms and defend yourself. Well, what if one of these multilateral agreements that are negotiated through the UN, you agree to disarm your populace? That's not a crazy idea. The UN's been trying to do that for years. And if it's already agreed to and the Congress doesn't get to specifically vote on it, you could literally have our government going door to door to disarm Americans. So this is a very scary idea, giving this, I've said this from the beginning, granting this much power to the president to negotiate on our behalf without any oversight, any real workable oversight, is a disaster waiting to happen. And it will be a disaster when Obama is no longer the president. I don't want to have any president have that much power. Hey, speaking of presidents, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about who my good friend Anne-Marie Morell, she is also the founder of Politichicks.com, but she's going to endorse a candidate as an individual. Coming up right here after this break here on the Tim Donnelly Show. So you will not want to miss that if you are a fan of Politichicks. And if you are not a fan of Politichicks, you should be, because she's gathered like 50 writers from every state, covers politics in a way I've never seen, and it's all just normal people like you and I. Well, I don't know if I'm normal, but I'm sure you are. Anyway, whatever you do, don't touch that dial. Stay tuned for Anne-Marie Morell with a big announcement coming up. Well, here is the moment you've been waiting for. We've got a big announcement coming from our good friend who really needs no introduction here to the Tim Donnelly Show. She's been a frequent guest. She's been here since the beginning, and that is Anne-Marie Morell. And you might remember when she was on last time, she mentioned that she sort of became a 9/11. She was a 9/11 Democrat, but a 9/12 became a Republican. And we're going to welcome her to the show because she's got a big announcement. She wants to endorse somebody for president. Anne-Marie Morell, welcome back to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hello, my radio governor. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I'm excited to have you on with this announcement. I know you've been hitting stations all day, but you are now on the radio station in California for conservatives. And what is it that you would like to announce?
Well, I have given this a lot of thought and consideration, and I've done a lot of research, and I've been listening, and I've been talking. I've actually talked in person to most of the Republican candidates that are running for president. A few of them I don't want to talk to, frankly, and I know you could probably name them
Jeb
without
Bush.
me something to say. Yeah, that's
Jeb
number
Bush.
one. Lindsey Graham. Yeah, Lindsey Graham.
Did I? Yeah. Oh, wait. Did you say, Lindsey, don't vote for me, Graham?
I did say that. But I mean, I've been, a lot of people have said, why are you endorsing someone so soon? But for me, I've never been someone to wait. I don't wait until like the last minute. I'm not a tepid kind of person. That's the reason I endorsed you for governor in the beginning, right?
I was going to say that you're not afraid of controversy. That's for sure.
No. Well, so today I'm endorsing the other controversial figure in the Republican presidential race, and that is Senator Ted Cruz.
So
that's
there
who
it
I'm
is.
endorsing. And he put out a press release today with quotes from Senator Cruz talking about me, which nearly made me die. I was screaming bloody murder all through this house in a happy way.
Okay, I
Yeah.
was going to say, hopefully happy. All right, so now you've made the announcement. Anne Marie Morell as an individual, not as politichicks.com, not as author, but basically as an individual. You're endorsing Senator Ted Cruz for President of the United States 2016. So, $64,000 question. I know you've written an op-ed. I linked it up
I'm not getting paid.
I linked it up at timdonnellyshow.com. Why are you endorsing Senator Ted Cruz, and why are you doing it now?
National security is my number one issue. It's also the number one issue for most Americans. I spoke last year at the National Security Summit in Washington, which ironically, Ted Cruz was also speaking there, and so was Dr. Ben Carson and a lot of other people that are really intelligent people. And
Frank Gaffney, who by the way, we're going to be having on the show tomorrow in the same time slot, so make sure you stay tuned.
Of course, yeah. Oh, Frank is one of my dear friends. I just adore him. But my panel was discussing a poll that came out last year that said overwhelmingly the number one concern among Americans, both on the left and the right, is national security. And you got to think what that really means, because about 10 years ago, most American families, their number one issue was making sure that they had a roof over their heads, or that they had job security, or that they had food on the table, their children got to go to college. Now, the number one issue among families is national security. And Tim, that's the one thing that our government is actually supposed to do, and that all of us conservatives, we're fine with national security protecting us and securing our borders. That is one of the main roles of government. And yet here we are, regular citizens having to worry about this.
Sure. And by the way, certainly when you look at Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, it states that the federal government shall keep each state free from invasion and shall guarantee a Republican form of government. Well, it's been an epic fail at both of those, and it has allowed an untold number of illegals to cross the border, including those who have evil intentions, who have snuck in among the sheep, wolves. So is part of your reason Senator Ted Cruz's tough stance against illegal immigration?
Oh, gosh, yeah, absolutely, because that goes hand in hand with national security. Now, this is funny, too, because most people, when you talk about immigration, they think, oh, you don't want the poor Mexican, field workers to have jobs. You want to kick these poor families out. That's not what we should even be discussing when we talk about immigration today in 2015. These days, we need to worry about terrorists getting into our country. And not only these terrorists that are coming across the border potentially aren't even sneaking across. They're being welcomed by the tens of thousands over the years, which is what Barack Obama is proposing with these Syrian migrants. These are not downtrodden, poor, starving immigrants, the way they keep describing them. These are unvetted, and they're unvetted because there's no way to tell who these people are. There's no way to tell whether they're good guys or bad guys, whether they're Islamic terrorists or they're not. There's no way to tell.
No,
so,
you're right.
We need someone who's strong on that. Yeah.
Even the head of the FBI said, who was an Obama appointee, said, look, we can't vet them properly. There's too many. Absolutely. We don't have enough resources. So the bottom line is why it ties into your point that you're endorsing Senator Ted Cruz because he's taken a tough stance on the issues that affect national security. But give me a little more specifics, because I know when in your op-ed you talk particularly about his view of Israel and his understanding of what the real threat is.
Well, I heard him speak. He spoke at the Nassau Synagogue here in California back in August, and I was honored to be a guest there that day. It was one of the most awe-inspiring events that I've ever attended in my life, frankly. This synagogue was created by Iranian Jews. These are Jewish people who had to escape with their lives from Islamic terrorists who took over Iran when the Ayatollah took over in 1979. So they came to California. These are real refugees who would have been slaughtered had they stayed in Iran. And so this synagogue, he spoke there, and the rabbi introduced him and said, this man is not only a public friend of Israel, who has fought for Israel publicly through his office, but he's also done it privately with his family in ways that people don't even know about. And one thing that Tim Cruz, I've now blended you together, Tim. The one thing that Ted Cruz, he has never shied away from calling an Islamic terrorist an Islamic terrorist. And that's you'd think that that's just kind of common sense. But these days, there are too many people who are terrified of being called some kind of phobe by calling someone what they are. And he hasn't ever shied away from that. He understands the threat. He was one of the strongest people fighting against the Iran nuclear deal. And so this synagogue, these people were cheering him, and they were so happy that they had someone who really got it, representing them, speaking for them, these Jewish people who understood the threat of Islamic terrorism. So that was another big turning point for me with Ted Cruz.
Now, I got to ask you a question that I get asked every single time I post anything about Senator Ted Cruz, who by the way, in interest of full disclosure, I am a good friend of his father, and I'm a huge fan of the senator. But there's always a post or someone saying, hey, he's not a natural-born citizen. You were against that when it was Obama. What's the deal? How can you, how do you answer the question of whether or not he is, first of all, even eligible to be president, which at this point seems ludicrous we'd even be talking about it, given how far we are into the campaign?
Right. Well, I'm referencing people to go to Mark Levin, and on politichicks.com and on my Facebook page too, I wrote an op-ed today about Ted Cruz and about all of and I said, I referenced an article. I'm trying to pull it up right now while I'm talking to you. It's got Mark Levin, and it's a radio thing. Mark Levin is explaining definitively why he is a citizen, and he even said he would qualify for the 1790 Naturalization Act. That's what they're referencing, the 1790 Naturalization Act. In today's world, and I believe, I'm not positive, so I'm not going to use this as fact, but I'm pretty sure in 1950 is when things changed, and it could be one parent. And boy, I hope that's not wrong, but I'm going to make sure I know this. But around 1950, Ted Cruz was born in 1970. His mother was born in Vermont. She is an American citizen. His father was not. He was not born an American citizen. Ted Cruz was born in Canada, but because his mother is an American citizen and lived in America more than 10 years of her life, and she lived most of her life in America, that is qualifying. Now, when you look at other people, George Romney, Mitt Romney's father, was born in Mexico. Barry Goldwater was born in the Arizona Territory, back before that was us. John McCain was born in the Panama Canal, And all of them, Mitt Romney and John McCain, had to be thoroughly vetted before they were considered eligible. So I also referenced, there's a Harvard Law Review article that I'll send you the link, Tim, so you can post it. But
sure.
That also was some of the highest up brains in America. Also said he was absolutely eligible.
Look, here's what convinced me is very, very simple. He never had to be naturalized. Mm-hmm. If he didn't have to be naturalized, then he is a natural-born citizen. End of story for me. So
Yeah.
that's it. But
I'm going to tell you, my own mother, questioned his eligibility. So I'm trying so hard to get this absolutely right and make sure that every T is dotted. And I love the Constitution, and that's the foundation of our country.
Absolutely.
But everyone that I have talked to about this, and I've heard from, and I've researched and I read, is that he is absolutely eligible. And he's not trying to bury any records. He's not trying to hide anything about his past. He's not trying to, he'll show his birth certificate to probably anyone who will ask for it.
Yeah.
So it's really not the same.
Anne-Marie Morel, Anne-Marie Morel, big announcement. We're going to be right back with more with my good friend right after this break. Well, another one does bite the dust, but, I shouldn't say another one, another 16. How many candidates are there left in the GOP side? We haven't had anyone drop out lately.
I think there's 42. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
No, you were thinking of how many states there are, and it's 57, according to President Obama.
57.
Yeah. But I was just reading, actually, on the break, you tagged me in something on Facebook, and there is actually a great article in the harvardreview.org, which is entitled on the meaning of natural-born citizen. And here, let me just read the first paragraph, because I think it sums it all up. We don't have to get into all the minutia. It is written by Neil Cattell, I can't say his name, and Paul Clement. We have both had the privilege of heading the office of Solicitor General during different administrations. So these are connected people. They know what they're talking about. We may have different ideas about the ideal candidate in the next presidential election, but we agree on one important principle. Voters should be able to choose from all constitutionally eligible candidates, free from spurious arguments that a U.S. citizen at birth is somehow not constitutionally eligible to serve as president simply because he was delivered at a hospital abroad. I think that sums it up. And you can read the whole article, but I'll post that up on my Facebook so that people can see it, because I'm tired of hearing from people, and I'm tired of arguing with people who attack me every time I even post anything about Senator Ted Cruz.
Yeah. And this article, it discusses the Naturalization Act of 1790 that I was referencing before, and it goes through every layer of it. And I mean, this is the Harvard Law Review, and yeah, Harvard has a lot of liberals, but it is what it is. It's something. It's a little tricky. I understand why people are confused, and as I said, my own mother is confused about it. But
in 1790, just to correct the record, Harvard was not a liberal institution. It was an institution whose entire purpose was to spread and propagate knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. If you can believe that.
Well, I mean, now it isn't. So yeah,
I'm just saying things have changed a little since 1790.
Oh, just a little.
All right, so yeah. Tell me two things. One. Mm-hmm. What has been the reaction today among your following? Because you have a pretty massive following on your personal Facebook page of your endorsement of Senator Ted Cruz.
I completely expected this morning when my op-ed came out, when everything started breaking, I figured I would be down to, I have 5,000 Facebook friends and 45,000 followers on Facebook. I expected to lose immediately, maybe a couple of thousand, but I haven't. I've lost some followers, of course, but so far I haven't lost any of my Facebook friends. I've had to block a few tweeters.
Well, by the way,
it's just vile.
The people who stopped following you came over and started following me, just so you know.
Oh, good. So they're not completely lost. There's still hope for them.
Well, I haven't endorsed anybody, and I'm not doing it because I don't want to lose friends. But no, you have done something in politics that takes some courage. You have endorsed someone. You've taken a strong stand. And give me a couple other reasons why you're excited about Senator Ted Cruz. In 30 seconds or less.
I also want to stress that I'm doing this as on my own. I'm not doing this through Politichicks, my website. Gina and Morgan still aren't decided, and they'll decide when they want to. But for me, I just felt I prayed about this really, really a long time. I prayed, and my answer was that now's the time that I need to speak out. I'm not afraid. I'm not trying to be a TV star or get my own radio show or anything else. I'm doing this because I feel it's the right thing to do.
Well, and on that note, I mean, certainly, I would think nothing less. You have been someone who is absolutely committed to fighting for truth and fighting for integrity in candidates and fighting for this country so that we would have a better leader at any level, whether it's the state level or the federal level. Anne-Marie, we're talking to Anne-Marie Morell. Can you stick around with us for another couple segments?
I sure can. I don't have anything until 6 o'clock.
All right. Awesome. We will continue. And by the way, if you want to call in, 323-746-8255, and you can talk to Anne-Marie. Your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in California. And I want to read you something before I bring my good friend Anne-Marie Morell back on the air. She'll probably be blushing a little bit. This is a press release from presidential candidate Senator Ted Cruz, and he says, Anne-Marie has been instrumental in igniting a conservative revolution in the media and blogosphere. She is a woman of great courage who speaks the truth and empowers others to do the same. Her leadership has provided a platform for thousands of women to voice their views and shape the political and cultural dialogue. Anne-Marie is capturing the momentum of millions of Americans who are standing up to the Washington cartel and making their voices heard. I am grateful for her support, and I am honored to have her endorsement. Well, he is indeed blessed, most assuredly. And Anne-Marie, you know what? It's nice to hear others singing your praises. I've always known you're an awesome American, a great patriot. You are the author of What Women Really Want, and you put out your story, which took a lot of courage, especially for someone who works in Hollywood. But anyway, congratulations on getting such great comments from a man who, if he doesn't become president, he will certainly be in line next time, because he is one of the few with real courage.
Well, thank you. Gosh, dang.
Yeah, I knew I'd make you blush.
That's difficult.
Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to the phones and bring some of your fans on air and make you blush even more. We're going to North Dakota. Gary, welcome to the show.
Well, hi there, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You're on with me and Anne-Marie, excuse me.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, Ann. How you doing?
I'm good.
Well,
It's a busy day.
It's kind of hard for me to call in these shows because I have a job. I'm working, and I'm working those hours, and radios aren't even allowed where I work. Radios or computers, anything. So I can't really listen to anything. So I'm getting out of touch.
Well, I'm glad you have a job. That's awesome.
I'm working in a prison. Is where I'm working now. So.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of openings there.
North Dakota has the lowest crime rate, or I'm sorry, the lowest unemployment rate in the country, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah, we're pretty close to it.
Like 2%.
Anyway, I was telling some of my colleagues, I I said, every day coming up here at the jail, I said, every day's an adventure. You hear stories every day what's going on. Some of the weird stuff that goes on there. But anyway, I was just going to talk about Ted Cruz a little bit. Right now, I'm a little undecided right now because I haven't really had a chance to really listen to any candidates speak much. But I would certainly support him if he gets nominated. I would definitely support him. And Trump, I'd probably say he would be okay, too. It'd be a toss-up between Trump and Cruz. You know, I think they're both would be great candidates. They're both strong-willed. That's what we need. Somebody that doesn't limp out and chicken out like the many in the Republican Party who's scared that they might be called racist or called names. You know, you can't let that bother you. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm used to it now. So, but anyway, I just wanted to call and tell Ann congratulations.
Right. Well, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Good to hear from you.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call, Gary and Marie. So pick up the ball with that. Obviously, a lot of my listeners support Donald Trump. And a lot of conservatives I know are split. They're either with Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, but they're favorable to some extent to both of them.
Well, Tim, I've talked to a lot of Democrats who are envious of us. And you don't hear that sentence very often. But
no,
they're envious
almost
because
never.
We have a lot, I know, but we have a lot of really great candidates to choose from. They don't. And I've heard, I can't even tell, I've heard from at least a dozen of my Democrat friends who have said, I don't like either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, but that's it. We don't have a choice. They're put in a position where we would have been had it not been for Donald Trump.
Well,
so I am very grateful he entered the race.
Is something interesting going on with Hillary? I was reading an article today. I haven't got into it yet on the show, but Hillary's in serious trouble. There's a guy running the FBI who is an Obama appointee, but he's a Republican, but he's sort of nonpartisan. His party is the rule of law, which I loved his comment. He's this big, huge 6'8" guy who's his whole family, they've been in law enforcement their whole lives, and they value and respect the rule of law, and they're disgusted by people who break the law and flout it. And so this is the guy who's on the case, and he's not gonna do Obama's bidding. He's gonna do whatever's right. And so Hillary could be in a lot of trouble. And the thing is, let's say that he brings a credible case against her and disqualifies her from even running, or she drops out, or she's facing charges. It's too late for them to put somebody else up.
How many times? I know I've said it on your show. I've said it on countless radio shows. I've said it on television. I do not believe, and still don't believe, Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee. The New York Times, they're the ones that went after her regarding the emails. They broke that story, not the Washington Times or Politics. It was them. They're the ones who leaked all this different information about Hillary Clinton. If she would have won, it would have been in 2008. She couldn't even beat an unknown Barack Obama, but that's because he had all of those powers behind him. I still believe, I think Joe Biden's going to show up at the last minute, or someone else, or it's going to be Bernie Sanders, but I do not believe it's going to be Hillary.
Here's a very strange development. The Washington Post is actually published this Signal Labs word cloud. It's called a word cloud. And basically, it pulls together all the words that are being used about you in social media. I'd hate to see what mine says, but I'm sure yours would be a little nicer. But look, this is what the big words are that are used the most, and they sort of pop out. And it's unethical behavior, fired, lies.
Yeah.
Unethical behavior, fired, and lies are the biggest words. Now, when you scroll down in this, and by the way, this is Washington Post, which is just a virulent shill liberal paper that makes no bones about the fact that they are wholly owned by leftists. Then you go down to Bernie Sanders, and it says realize, vote, moment, YouTube, all kind of happy words, upbeat words, tied into younger people and their dreams and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
This is a Washington Post reporting this.
Yeah. The media doesn't like Hillary. Her people don't like her. I mean, very few people that I've heard from on the inside who have known her like her. She's not a likable person. She is power hungry. She's, the one thing, you can be an ambitious woman, but please don't let it be shown, because people will never accept ambitious women who show their ambition. And she is dying to become the president of the United States. That's what I guarantee that's the reason she stayed with Bill all these years. But when people talk about Hillary, even on her own side, they feel resigned that that's all they're going to have, kind of like we've been feeling the last couple of elections when it was John McCain and then it was Mitt Romney. It was like we did not have a choice. And again, with Donald Trump, because of Donald Trump, we wouldn't even be talking about Ted Cruz as any kind of viable candidate. We would only be talking about Jeb Bush right now, because he was in line to be the nominee.
Yeah,
and Donald Trump went in there and shook everything up like crazy.
It brings a smile to my face to see Jeb Bush fading off into the distance behind us. Hey, we're talking to Anne Marie Morell. In case you don't recognize that distinctive voice, we will take more of your calls when we come back from this break. 323-746-TALK if you want to get in on the action. Hey, welcome back to the show. We're talking with Anne Marie Morell. You may know her from Politichicks.com, which is a growing blog website, where you can get news from all over the country. She's got over 50 columnists who are people just like you, or you may know her as the author of the great book on what women really want. Or you may just know her as my good friend. However you know her, she is being known all over the country as she made an announcement, is one of the early conservatives taking a stand. And Anne Marie, I don't know if you realize how significant it is that you are coming out this early in favor of Senator Ted Cruz, but it's obviously a big deal to his campaign. And you've been on media all day, and I'm sure you booked a bunch of stuff for tomorrow. It's exciting stuff.
It really is. I knew it would be daunting. I knew I prayed for extra armor to keep my sanity and keep my head clear when people came to me, because of course anytime you put yourself out there on that big of a limb, people are going to shake it and try to knock you off. But I'm confident in what I do, and I don't care about the haters. Haters are going to hate, right, Bob?
That's what they do. If you don't have haters, you're not making a difference. But speaking of I can't. There's no good segue here, because this man is not a hater, except he does hate evil. He served our country. He's a frequent caller to our show. Mike from Wrightwood, you are on with myself and Anne Marie Morell. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Nice to talk to both of you. And I always appreciate it, because I have daughters, and when I have a lady out there that shows that there's a lot more in life that can be done, and they can't be stopped. I mean, it's one thing I taught my daughters all along was, whatever you want to do, you do it, and I don't care what anybody says. You're just as equal.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you guys asked the question on how do you recognize extremists, and I had a team in Iraq, and that's what we did. I mean, I sat down with al-Baghdadi on 2 occasions, and there are people out there that know how to profile these guys, that know how to find out who they are and what they are. And we've actually, some of us, even my team, we've tried to volunteer to go back and, to do this stuff with the government, but they don't want the help. They're going to do what they're going to do anyways. But, I mean, one of the aspects that would be nice, though, if you can ever get into, would be to give a a female's version of what's going on with Islam, because every time I talk to people and try to get them to understand the Quran and what it does to women and how it demeans them and, things like that, and why extremism is a trip, and, how much more difficult it can be and how much more dangerous it can be in this country if we continue to allow it. And people don't seem to think that it's a big deal because they don't think it actually treats women any differently. And I did see a program one time where they thought about whether or not it was a book of love or a book of hate. And it was an actual female author that was, fighting for it to be a book of hate. And the security was unbelievable to get into this facility because, of course, that's a bad thing. But there's not enough people that, and there's people that actually are for the Quran, which kind of blows my mind since I know the Quran. And I think that if more people can understand from a female's point of view, it might help out a little more, because I heard the other candidate we got running, and I was pretty furious when he came out and said that, they don't like it because we have women that tribe and we let people, women do this and women do that. And it's like, no, they hate us because we're non-believers. And until that can get instilled in the American people will always think that we had to do something wrong to make them people hate us. And the simple fact is we're non-believers, and that's all that's needed. And, it's nice that, hopefully, somebody like you can, really push that point, and hopefully Ted Cruz doesn't go that route, because I know his other senator running against him, he went out and made a stupid statement and just totally turned me off of him, because it shows that, he's either not getting the right people talking to him, or, he's just passing along what, a lot of people have been saying for a long time, that it's our fault they hate us, and that is so untrue. But it was, it's great to talk to you, and I hope you have a lot of success, and, I know that you're hanging out there with Tim. He's a good guy, so, you did.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And you're so right about. I'm sorry. What?
Oh no, I was going to say thanks, Mike, for the nice comment. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
Well, I was just in my book, What Women Really Want. I wrote a whole chapter about the real war on women, and it's all about the abuses that have happened throughout the world regarding Islam, and it's the abuses are so primitive, and they are happening right now as we speak. It's not something that's just a politically incorrect thing to say. It's just, they're facts. And nowadays with the internet, you can Google search anything like that and find out the truth. But a lot of people, it's so overwhelming, and they're so terrified of being called an Islamophobe or religiously intolerant, although it has nothing to do with religion. This is basically their political ideology. When they follow the Quran, they're following the Hadith. They're following the Hadiths that were written with the Quran, that goes along with the Quran, which is the law, the Sharia law that establishes the Hadiths in the Quran. So it's all interconnected, and it's all dangerous. And you're right, they're not trying to hurt us because we did anything wrong. We don't believe the way they do, and that's all it takes. They believe it's their duty to eliminate us and any and all non-believers.
Well, Mike, thanks for the call, Mike. Anne Marie, you make a good point. A big part of their issue is literally. And this is where it crosses over beyond Christians and Jews and anybody else to even Muslims that are not purist enough in their ideology, that wind up being subjected to these jihads as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, well, of course. So, my friend Nani Darwish put it the best way that I ever heard. She said the good Muslims are the ones who are out there slaughtering people. The bad ones aren't following what Muhammad and what the Hadiths told them to do. So, and I'm going to say this too, and I've said it before. If Christianity taught me that if someone isn't a Christian, that I'm supposed to kill them, I wouldn't be a Christian. I would turn away from that religion. That's not what Christianity or Judeo-Christianity has taught. But their religion, their political ideology does. So that's the problem. That's one of the main reasons why I became a Republican. I talked about that too. I wrote it in the book. On 9/11, I realized that we can't have peace on earth, goodwill toward man, as long as there's a group of people who hate us simply because we exist. And if we're not even able to stand up and say that's wrong, then there's something really wrong with us. And we're seeing the downfall of that in Paris and in countries across the world.
Anne-Marie Morel, you are a beacon of light in this often dark world. I want to thank you for coming on today. Thanks for sharing your big announcement. You have endorsed Senator Ted Cruz for president, and people can find you at politichicks.com. They can find you on Facebook just under your own name. I think you have something like, 45,000 followers just on your personal Facebook page?
Yeah, I don't know why.
I
feel sad for
wish
people sometimes.
I wish I had that many hairs on my head. That's all I gotta say.
Oh no, you'd be a caveman.
Anyway, thanks for coming on with us, and we will talk to you again soon. We'll check in with you as this campaign goes on. But thanks for standing up.
Of course, absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
Hey, we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Hey, if you're just tuning in to the Radio Free California Network, where have you been? You're missing all the fun, but guess what? You can always catch up at timdonnellyshow.com. Click on previous shows, and Chief Engineer Sean McNeil always posts up the previous day's show for your listening enjoyment. That's our podcast right there. And by the way, Anne-Marie Morel, yeah, I was thinking about her on the break. Prior to 9/11, she was a Democrat. She had her head in the sand. She voted for people like Bill Clinton. She voted for Feinstein and others here in the state of California. And it was 9/11 that woke her up. It was 9/11 that woke a lot of people up who stopped being mindless followers. And this has happened in both parties. This is not simply a Republican or Democrat thing. And now that we have a president who clearly cannot seem to articulate with any ability the true danger that is represented by Islamic jihadism, I think we could potentially, in the 2016 election, we could see an awakening, certainly not of the same proportions as 9/11, but as sort of a follow-on, kind of like the earthquakes, the aftershocks. You have the earthquake, and then you have the aftershocks. And this could be an aftershock to 9/11. But clearly something is changing in the political dialectic. I mean, we're hearing from Democrats who are supporting Donald Trump. We're hearing from all kinds of people who are finally beginning to vote the issues that most concern them. And if you are a national security voter, you have no options now in the Democrat Party. There is nobody there. Hillary was busy putting national security at risk with her emails, and she's in trouble. I mean, when I see the leftist publications like the Washington Post and the New York Times attacking Hillary Clinton, they're trying to get her out of the race so that they can get a credible candidate in, I believe, who will not be someone with a millstone tied around their neck. The unlikability of Hillary, I think, will be her ultimate downfall. As Anne-Marie said, she's such a strident and greedy, well, it's a word I can't probably use on air, but it rhymes with stitch. I mean, I don't know what else to call her, but okay, I didn't call her that, I guess. I just made you call her that in your head. But there's just something mean about her. And there's something ugly about her naked ambition. And don't even get me started on her naked, because that's a scary thought right there. Maybe that's why Bill Clinton is running around with all these interns. But and there's no reason she ever would have stayed with him if she were a true quote unquote feminist. She stayed with him because it suited her. And when he's getting paid $500,000 per speech, who do you think is going to be writing checks when she's running for president? This was all orchestrated, and the way that she has been so willing to sell out our interests, the way that she's been willing to push these foreign governments. And what did they think they were buying? This access that they were buying. What exactly did they think they were getting for all that money? You don't write $100 million checks. You don't write $5 million checks. You don't write $10 million checks unless you think you're getting something. And being able to have that kind of access to a president as opposed to a Secretary of State is priceless. Because then you're in the catbird seat. You're in the in group. You're in the clique. Nothing can go wrong for you in your relationship with the United States if you are in bed with the president. At least nothing that can't be fixed by the fixers. And believe me, the Clintons know how to fix things. So I just think we're in a year when things are clearly, they're much different than they were in previous presidential elections. It seemed like there was less at stake in past campaigns than there is now. And there's a palpable sense, not just because of the terrorism and the Islamic strikes in France, not just because of what has happened here with Tennessee, with our recruiting centers where American soldiers were attacked, with Fort Hood, where American soldiers were attacked by Islamic jihadists right here from the inside. Obviously, that has awoken a certain protective instinct within a lot of Americans, especially for our young people who are in harm's way, as well as just ordinary citizens who then become targets of opportunity. But there's something else. There's this whole move by the leftists, the Marxist progressives, to put government in control of every aspect of our lives, whether it's the climate control agenda, where they want to take away your freedom and your livelihood. Also, they can save the planet. You know, I used to enjoy watching kids' movies with my kids until every plot became save the environment from the evil oil companies or the evil industrialists, the evil corporations. And it finally became, hey, who the hell do you think created the video, the movie you're watching? An evil corporation. So get over it. By the way, corporation is simply a structure by which you protect your assets from the government. And most corporations are mom and pop. They're one or two people. But it's just it's like an umbrella. Why is an umbrella the bad guy instead of the rain? The acid rain falling out of the sky. The government is the acid rain. The government is the mafia. So if I want to own a gun, if I want to protect myself, if I want to buy a shield to protect my family, and that shield is called corporation, then certainly people get lost in the shuffle and they buy into this mindless propaganda. And that's how the communists have infiltrated this country. They've done it through the mindlessness of our institutions. They've taken over the education establishment. They have infiltrated the media. They have infiltrated of course, the labor union. That was where they got their big foothold. That's back when Ronald Reagan was fighting them tooth and nail as a Democrat. Think about this. There was a time in this country when Democrats fought against labor unions that were pushing socialism and communism and pushing for the takeover and the transformation of this country. And now Democrats are in lockstep with the communists. Democrats are in lockstep with socialism. Democrats love government control. And when I say Democrats, I mean the Democrat Party. I mean the Democrat elitists. I mean the Democrats who are running California, the Democrats who are running the National Party. They love it. They're happy. I mean, Bernie Sanders is at least honest about it. He's like, look, I want to take everything you earn and I want to give it to people who don't deserve it. If you got an issue with that, don't vote for me. But at least he's honest. Hillary is not. Barack Obama actually was honest. He said, I want to fundamentally transform America. Nobody ever asked him into what. And now we know, of course. He wanted to turn us into a socialist footstool for all the countries in the world that we so-called harmed. Just seeing the complacency and the inability to grasp what is right before us is probably the most frustrating thing. That's why the goal of this show is to inform, educate, and engage. And we try to talk in different language. We are not a tool of either party. We hate them both because they have failed as institutions. They're no longer useful. And you know, it's funny. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about this whole shakedown of what's going to happen maybe at the convention and what to look out for on the Republican side. 323-746-TALK if you got something to say. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the show. We're talking before the break about what could happen, and there are a number of predictions that the Republican nomination could come down to the convention. And let me just tell you something right now. If it comes down to the convention, that means you've got to count delegates. I know a lot of you feel like California is never in play. You may feel like California is insignificant in all presidential context. Well, I got news for you. If it comes down to getting delegates, California could be hugely important to the Republican Party because delegates are just numbers. And if you get more numbers than the other guy, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether it's those votes come from a blue state or a red state. It just matters how many actual delegates you get who pledge their vote to you. And this is where Donald Trump will get an education in how the political establishment works. And believe me, their playbook can be summed up in one simple word. If you want to understand who the GOP elitists are, they're the people who believe they have a right to win at all costs. They don't care how. They don't care what rules they break. They don't care if they have to cheat. There is no cheating because in the end, the ends justifies the means for them. That's what they did in the gubernatorial race in California for the primary in 2014, and that is what they are going to do, and they are doing. They're singling out people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz because they consider them too conservative, and they want to have a happy-go-lucky country club. They want to be liked by all of the people. They want to fit in with the Hollywood elite. I got news for you. It's kind of like what Anne Marie said, echoing what Mike said from Wrightwood. They don't hate you because of something you did. They hate you because you exist. You see, the Hollywood elitists hate anyone who disagrees with them. There's only one right answer to every question, and the only question is whether you're purist enough to fit in with the clique. And even then, you might not get in. But at least they don't want to kill you then. I mean, the hypocrisy of Hollywood is only rivaled by the hypocrisy of a religion that calls itself the religion of peace. Meanwhile, the ultimate goal is to decimate and force everyone in the world, the entire globe, into submission. I mean, today, the Drudge Report is rife with articles about the upcoming movies. Evidently, there's a movie that stars, what is that guy's name? The one that was in Titanic. Give me a second here. I don't know why he's so forgettable. I guess the idea that anybody, Leonardo DiCaprio, he gets raped by a bear in a movie. I mean, there is no redeemable point to do anything like that for any reason. It goes back to my point earlier that we have a generation, and I'm not talking about the younger generation. I'm actually talking about the baby boomers. I'm not talking about Generation X and Y and whatever the heck is coming down the line, Z, that's coming behind us. I'm talking about the generation that came just before me, and that's the baby boomers. And they seem to, they've had it so good for so long that all they can do is look for some cause to be outraged. The more outrageous, the better. And you have this Quentin Tarantino. He's made a movie called The Hateful Eight. It's 3 hours plus an overture and an intermission. It's all blood and guts and gore. Who wants to see that? I mean, you've got the nightly news. You don't need. I don't know. I always thought I always loved movies because they sort of carried you away from your normal life. They uplifted you. They transcended. They gave you a vision of what you could become. They gave you a glimpse into a world that maybe you would never see in your life. And I've always loved going to movies. And lately, I can no longer suspend my disbelief. The stories are not well constructed, and they just don't move me. So maybe I've become too jaded. I don't know. But it's, I can't imagine anyone going to a movie to watch an actor get raped by a bear. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. If that's something you would go and see, give me a call, 323-746-TALK. Maybe we could get you some help. I'm not sure that. Anyway, when we come back from this next break, though, I want to get into. You remember the whole claim that Donald Trump stated there were thousands and thousands of Muslims who were cheering in the streets in New Jersey after on 9/11. Well, the media has shamelessly just annihilated Trump all over this issue. We've discussed it on this show. We had a lady call from out in, I believe, Palmdale, who made a point that she had seen it in the Washington Post, and I sort of clarified the next day that, yeah, it was sort of a, hey, we heard this story, but we can't confirm it or something like that. Well, now there is a list of 9 pieces of documentation that actually vindicate Donald Trump's claim that there were 9/11 Muslim celebrations in New Jersey. Now, not thousands upon thousands. There's nothing to validate that. So the number was exaggerated, and Trump is a man of hyperbole. But it does really show you the media, and I'm going to go through those point by point because I just think it's good to follow it all the way through and follow and connect the dots and begin to see that those that you trusted in the media really do have an agenda, even if they say whatever they say with a big smile on their face and they're so believable. That's just a skill set. Anyway, 323-746-TALK. We'll be right back with more of the Tim Donnelly Show. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're going to go to a piece at Breitbart.com where they do a lot of reverse fact-checking of the leftist, left-stream media, and they do an excellent job. They've been all over this story since the beginning, and they started out with 7 pieces of evidence. Now the story today is it's up to 9 that Donald Trump's claim that there were Muslims celebrating on 9/11 in New Jersey is in fact true. Now, when he says thousands, there's no evidence for thousands, but there's clearly evidence for the fact that there are indeed Muslims who were cheering as brave first responders were digging through the rubble to try to rescue people from the ashes on 9/11. And New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani was one who was being interviewed by Allison Camerata, CNN. Camerata quizzed Giuliani, hoping he would say Trump is lying. She was frustrated when Giuliani merely said that Trump had been exaggerating and pointed out hitherto ignored examples of handfuls of Muslims celebrating in New York. And those weren't just rumors. Those weren't just reports. You went out and fact-checked them, Camerata said, as if the mayor, whose credibility she had hoped to exploit to bash Trump, were suddenly in doubt. Giuliani confirmed the reports. Then, after Giuliani's interview, an exasperated Chris Cuomo admitted, were people celebrating on 9/11? Yes. Is it wrong? Yes. Should you say thousands were? No. Like somehow that's a crime to exaggerate. Trump gets excited, but his facts were dead on, and they didn't want to admit it. You had MTV go all the way to the extent in a burst of Orwellian memory holing, MTV even brought back one of the witnesses so she could recant her story 14 years later. See, people had said all over the place, live in all these different media outlets, they had told the truth that there were Muslims jumping up and down, fists in the air, chanting and declaring Allahu Akbar in concert, in solidarity with the bombers who had taken so many American lives. That's just a fact. Washington Post is article number 4 of evidence. In his lying fact check, Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler writes, there's absolutely no evidence of the celebrations cited by Trump, except, of course, for all the proof listed here in a contemporaneous report in his own left-wing newspaper. That's what I forget her name, but from Palmdale, she mentioned, I think it was Debbie, mentioned that this was truth, and she was right. A report, I should add, that Kessler did not even include in his own initial fact check. Either this, Hillary Guardian tried to cover up the Washington Post report, or he just didn't look hard enough for evidence backing Trump's claim. But this appeared on September 18th of 2001. Here, I'm going to read you the exact quote. In Jersey City, within hours of 2 jetliners plowing into the World Trade Center, law enforcement authorities detained and questioned a number of people who were allegedly seen celebrating the attacks and holding tailgate-style parties on rooftops while they watched the devastation on the other side of the river. That report was never retracted by the Washington Post. So you know what? the next time you hear a newspaper or a reporter affirmatively declare something, especially when they're challenging a conservative or someone like Donald Trump, Donald Trump has a lot of flaws, but being a liar is not one of them. He may be a big mouth, but he's not a liar. New York Post, this is number 5. This appeared in the New York Post editorial written by Fred Siegel on September 14th of 2001. He said, here in New York, it is easy to get angry listening to Egyptians, Palestinians, and Arabs of nearby Paterson, New Jersey celebrate as they receive word of the murderous attack in New York and Washington. But Mayor Giuliani, who has been tireless and magnificent in this crisis, rightly warned New Yorkers that it would be wrong to take out our anger on the city's Arab and Muslim residents. Attacks on Arab Americans in Paterson or elsewhere are utterly indefensible. Once again, story never retracted. Number 6, there were radio news reports of Muslim celebrations. You had Jesse Sinegal at the New York Magazine, who worked hard today to try to debunk an earlier story covering all this. In the so-called debunking, though, we learned that Siegel is a witness to September 11th radio news reports covering the Muslim celebrations. Obviously. So here the guy who's trying to disprove it was a witness to it, and he's just lying. Siegel told the Daily Intelligencer that he first heard about the celebrations and the nationalities of the perpetrators on the radio, although he couldn't remember which station. In addition to those reports, he said he believes that some Muslims did celebrate because he had heard it from 2 sources, an acquaintance from Clifton, New Jersey, and an Arab American professor with whom he corresponded. Not a small detail. Number 7, there were legions and legions of witnesses. You'd have to be a sap to believe everyone using social media to claim they witnessed American Muslims celebrating on 9/11, but you'd have to be a liar to dismiss all of them, as the D.C. media is doing. Number 8, former New York Police Department Commissioner Bernie Kerik confirmed, and you can see they even pulled a tweet. He was all over the place. Confirms post 9/11 New York City area Muslims celebration. CNN, he says that we had a large number of reports of people celebrating Muslims. I remember Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. There were some in Queens, and I believe there were some in Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey, and Jersey City. That's from the police commissioner himself back in 2001. And then you have CBS anchor Dan Rather, and you got him telling David Letterman of reports of witnesses who saw Muslims on rooftops celebrating. You know, it's hard to believe that this media is so absolutely committed to demonizing Donald Trump, to undermining conservatives, to trashing and denigrating anyone who actually takes a stand for America and is willing to take some criticism. They're willing to go pell-mell after Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or anyone on the right, but they won't actually tell you the truth about what the Muslims did on 9/11, and that's way more outrageous than the fact that Donald Trump might have misspoken or exaggerated the numbers. Maybe in his mind it was exaggerated by how it made him feel. I don't know, but we're going to take a quick break and come back with the final segment of the Tim Donnelly Show here. 323-746-TALK if you want to talk about it. Hey, if you were looking for truth, if you were looking to be informed, educated, so you can engage in the issues of the day, you came to the right place. The Radio Free California Network, that is our goal. That's our mission. And, you know, speaking of Donald Trump, there's a great headline, and I was reading the story on the break, that Donald Trump was at a CNN, he was at a campaign rally in Macon, Georgia, and he threw down to CNN chairman Jeff Zucker and said, "Hey, you know what? All of the ratings in the previous debates have been because of me. So if you want me to show up at your debate, I want you to pledge $5 million. You're going to pay me $5 million, but it's not going to go to me. I want it to go to our veterans because you're getting all this increase in advertising rates and you should do something good with it." You got to love this guy. He knows how to handle the media, to get press, and to direct it towards something positive. And so now there's another headline. I want to talk about a couple things, and we may run out of time here, and I'll just have to pick it up again tomorrow. But there's a story out, and I'll bring all the details on it tomorrow, about a House Democrat who is saying that Obama could cause nuclear war with Russia. So you know how there's always this unified front against the Republican presidents whenever they do anything with foreign policy. And you have the polar opposite. You have nonstop, nothing but sycophants in the media, nothing but a lockstep party standing behind whoever the champion is for the Democrat Party. So when one individual actually steps aside and says, "Hey, wait a minute, I've got serious concerns. This is what I'm telling you. There's something in the air. There's something going on in this election cycle that, and it could be any number of issues." That's the funny thing, and that is my segue to the next topic. One of the biggest issues among the younger people, among the Generation X, Y, and Z, is privacy. And there's a story out today that goes way back. There was a filing made, and there was an 11-year battle waged by an individual named Nicholas Merritt against the FBI. Nicholas Merrill, who is the founder of Calix Internet Access. So he was a hosted service provider, and he received what's called an NSL, a National Security Letter. He received in 2004. And Merrill told Reuters that the release was significant because the public deserves to know how the government is gathering information without warrants on Americans who are not even suspected of committing a crime. Basically, the government can demand from an internet service provider, so any tech company, so think Google, think AOL, think Time Warner, Charter, whoever your cable is with, whoever your internet service is with, they can send a letter, demand all records on every single web search you've ever done, every website you've ever visited, anything and everything about you and your internet habits. The government can request and demand from your internet service provider. And here's the problem. The individuals who, like Nicholas Merritt, who receive these letters, they're never even allowed to tell the public. They're sworn to secrecy. They're not allowed to talk about it. And this one guy, I can't believe there's only one guy stood up to him and said, "This is bogus. There's no warrant. There's no reason why anybody should be investigating and crawling into the records of free Americans who have done nothing wrong." But national security letters have been available as a law enforcement tool since the 1970s. But their frequency and breadth expanded dramatically under, you guessed it, the USA Patriot Act, which was passed shortly after 9/11. Here we are, back at 9/11. They're almost always accompanied by an open-ended gag order barring companies from disclosing the contents of the demand for customer data. You didn't know it, but the government has a right to spy on you. Then they have a right to shut up the people who have helped them spy on you. And meanwhile, you haven't done anything wrong. You haven't committed a crime. You're not a terrorist. You're not a suspected terrorist. You're not. They can't even find. See, I hear it in my voice. I'm getting so worked up. They can't even find the suspected terrorists who go out on social media, who put their plans out there, who make it clear what they're doing, and somehow the geniuses who believe they have a right to spy on anyone, everyone, anywhere, anytime, without any accountability. They couldn't stop those killers who went to Texas. It took a cop and his bullets from his sidearm. They couldn't stop the Fort Hood shooting. They couldn't stop the mass shooting up in Oregon, even though the guy put it out on the internet 24 hours in advance. They did. I'll give them credit. They did stop the guy in Chicago that was going to kill 16 white people, but that's only because somebody called them. So with all this technology, I got a simple question. Why are you okay with the government spying on you in the name of national security if they can't do bupkis? They can't seem to do anything but Keystone Cop routines with the information that's out there. Why is it that we find out later, if we find out afterwards, after there's some mass shooting, after there's some terrorist attack, we find out afterwards they were out on social media bragging about it. They were talking about exactly what they were planning to do. And that right there that's the issue. I refuse. And by the way, this story is on Yahoo, but it's not on U.S. Yahoo. It's on Canadian Yahoo. I've discovered, like, anytime you want the truth about what's really going on in California, you've got to go to the New York media because they don't seem to want to cover it here because they don't want to piss people off in power and they don't want to lose access. They're not really the watchdog of the press. They should be. But I got to tell you, this story, and there's another one that we'll talk about tomorrow. In Europe, you have the right to be forgotten. You can request to be forgotten, to have things that are on the internet about you removed and forgotten. They call them forget requests. They got 350,000 of them in Europe since that became your right. Why is Europe ahead of us in rights? Because I would like to remove a lot of the garbage that people have said about me, especially being in political office. And I'm sure most of you probably have something out there that you would like taken off, but you got to move to Europe, I guess, if you want that right. Hey, I don't do this show alone. I want to thank the extraordinary Sean McNeil, Chief Engineer, all of our sponsors, and you. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.